Hello and welcome. Good evening, everybody. Let's see who we have in chat. We've got a fair few in this evening, which is always good to see. All the usual folks I can see. I won't go through and read everybody's name out, because you all know who you are. But good evening, everybody. Great to have you with us tonight. And Italeri dropped their 2026, they call it a preview, rather than their release schedule. Everybody calls it different things. Everybody does it a different way. I kind of like the way that Airfix do it, because it kind of draws attention to certain things and kind of shows the focus. It's a bit more involved. Just dropping a catalogue these days, or a PDF online of catalogue or preview, whatever you want to call it, seems a bit 1990s. It seems to be missing out. Marketing and I don't know, the sort of PR side of it, I think is important if you're trying to sell things. This is a specialized audience. You guys know what you want. And just doing a static sort of release just doesn't seem to be great. Sounds wobbling in and out. Is anybody else having that problem, or is it just you, Pheno? My microphone is on. I've got so I can see a little monitor of my audio mixer. Everything's green there, so it could just be, dare I say it, your connection, maybe. If it is me, please, other people, do let me know. And I'll try and fix it. But everything on my side looks good. Of course, I can't tell what happens when it gets to YouTube. We only have so much control. General consensus seems to be that it is good or has cleared up. So wait. Okay, good. So let's have a look. I'm going to go through it in the same way that I did with the Airfix releases. Obviously, I'm on OBS tonight rather than StreamYard, which gives me a little bit better control. So I just need to wet my whistle slightly. So it will just go to the screen, showing you all the stuff. You don't need to see me. You can hear me. And looking at the releases and all the stuff, all the information I prepared, is probably the important bit, right? So let's see if this works. There we go. And that's the wrong way round. It always seems to do this. Right. Now hopefully, there we go. The system works. Excellent. So 2026 releases from Italeri. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've broken it down in the same way that I break down all releases. So I talk about new tools first, because they're the kind of headline items, the really interesting stuff. And I think the bit that we can, chew the fat over a bit more. Then tools with new parts, which again, can be substantial or not. Then I'm going to go through reissues. And reissues have a number of different forms, and I'll explain in each one. What I've also done for this time is added a traffic light system on whether I think it's a good or a bad release. I might retrospectively go back and do this to the Airfix one, and I might release these both as videos as well. We'll have to see. Time will tell. So the first thing that they've announced is a 1/48 scale SM79 Spadugherio. So this is the definitive, the iconic 3-engined World War II Italian bomber. It's kind of what everybody thinks of if you were asked to name an Italian bomber from World War II, provided you could actually name an Italian bomber from World War II, the SM79 is probably what you'd come up with, right? They did a new tooled one of these in 72nd scale, quite a long time ago now, but it was very, very nice. It certainly blew everything else out of the water at the time. But this in 48 scale, I think is great. So I'm a little disappointed with the scheme that they've got here. Obviously, this is just the overall green one. This is one of the schemes that obviously the Reggio Aeronautica had, and this is obviously a torpedo bomber version. But we all know the Italians did some fantastic camouflage schemes, and I really hope that the other schemes that they show in this really reflect that, sort of sand and spinach, as they say, camouflage schemes that you can really go wild with. So I think 48 scale it's increasingly popular. Large scales are becoming more and more popular from 1/72 scale. And I think this is spot on. I think as a flagship release on the aircraft side, this is spot on. I think it's a really good timing. If you actually have a look, the last 48 scale Spaviero was back in 2003. So that's a trumpeter kit. So that's 23 years ago now. I mean, good God, that's 2003 seems like a recent time if you just say it off the top of your head, and then you realise, no, that was over 20 years ago. And before that, there was the classic airframe. So we're only two toolings within a couple of years of each other. That's it. That's all of the 48 scale SM79s that have ever been. So I think it's great timing. I think it's a great subject. You can actually see there, just from the trumpeter box art, actually, and the classic airframes, much nicer schemes there than Italeri have represented with a rather bland green one. But I agree, it's great box art. The box art looks great. I just wish they had gone for, this kind of sand and spinach kind of scheme on it. But I think that's great. I think that's a really, really nice release. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll definitely get this one onto my bench. So we then move on, and the next is the MC202 Folgore. Now, this was actually announced in their catalogue last year as coming in 2025. So if you go back and have a look at my preview for 2025, this was on it and it looked good, but it didn't actually get there. So it's nice to see that it hasn't just been abandoned; that it's just slipped into 2026. Completely new tooling. If we look at what else is available, again, you've got to go back to 2007 for a Toro model. That's a resin kit, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Hasegawa do a 48 scale one. That's more than 30 years old now. It's come out a lot as well, that kit. It's been issued a number of times, as Hasegawa tend to do. Not that it's not a nice kit, but I think 48 scale, the detail with CAD, because I think 1995, the very, very early days of CAD, CNC machining didn't exist in the way it does today. Certainly wasn't generally in use for tooling. So the improvements that have been made to recreate detail in 1/48 scale, I think definitely, will be reflected in this release. So I think the 202. I think the 202 it's a nice looking aircraft, right? I think the 202, for me, the inline engines compared to the radial, the 200, which preceded it, which the 200, 202, and 205 were all excellent fighters. But I think the lines of the 202 and the 205 are just that much smoother, that much neater, that much more. It's Spitfire-esque, right? It has that sort of profile. It looks kind of cool. So, again, I'll be definitely getting one of these on the bench. And I think that's a really, really nice one. So stepping down then to 1/72 scale, we have the M346 Master. So this is a modern training aircraft. It's quite a cute little little thing. It's very similar to the what is it, the Sukhoi? I can't remember the name of it, but the Russian training aircraft. It looks very similar to that with these sort of forward, sort of leading edge extensions. It's got these little shoulder, don't know, blades. What do you call them? It's got a cool little aircraft. 72nd scale. It's going to be quite diddy. But they obviously recently, a couple of years ago, did the Ghibli. So this goes very much in with that. And I think so far what you've seen, so we've seen 3 Italian aircraft. They are playing to their strengths. In the same way that Airfix plays to its home market, Italeri are doing exactly the same here. Which I think is, it's a good thing, right? In terms of what else is out there, in 72nd scale, if you go to 48 scale, there are the kinetic kits. But 72nd scale, the only thing I could find are these resin models from Grand Models, which are pretty expensive. And again, resin, different medium. It's nice to have a mainstream injection molded 1/72nd scale kit of this. So for me, I think this is a really good release. Next up, and sticking with that Italian scheme, we got the Vespa. So this is, this is a Vespa PX 125/150, 1978, the iconic Vespa that everybody kind of thinks of when you think of a Vespa or an Italian bike, or scooter, I should say. So some of you out there, this is 1/9 scale, because it's a small little vehicle, obviously. Some of you might think, well, I'm sure Italeri did a 1/9 scale Vespa before. Why are they doing completely newly molded kit of this? Yes, it's an iconic thing, but it's, it seems strange to have 2 in the range. Well, that's because their former one, and again, this is, not that long ago, this box came out, 2019, so 5 or 6 years. It's a Protar kit. So not actually an Italeri tooling at all. So they didn't even add any new parts to this. This was just reboxed, and then originally in 2008, and then they added some new parts to it in 2019 for its release. But it is a Protar kit. And Protar are an Italian, or were an Italian manufacturer of cars and bikes back in the sort of 80s. And I think they went defunct just at the turn of the century. And obviously, Italeri picked up their tools. And remember that name, because it won't be the last time we'll be seeing it. That in the trade is known as foreshadowing. The other thing they have, now we're departing slightly from the Italian theme. Another new mould is the Mercedes-Benz SSK. So this is 1/12 scale. So this is, again, one of their big old kits. They've been doing quite a lot of these 1/12 scale classic cars. They obviously did the Stratos. They did the Bugatti. They did a couple of Bugattis, actually. And now they're turning to the Mercedes-Benz SSK. This, I think, is another good release. They're establishing their name as a 1/12 scale car manufacturer. Some people like them, some people don't, but they are pretty much alone in the large scale manufacturers, the big boys, in making these sorts of size kits. So I think this is quite good. SSK, it's quite a handsome car. It's obviously a Mercedes, so it'll get leverage on the continent as well. So for me, I think this, again, is another good one. I think the key part with all of these, of course, which we don't know, that we did know with Airfix, is price. So this is likely to be about £150-ish. That's generally what their 1/12 cars are. Now, for that, obviously this is a big project. It's similar to doing a 1/24 scale aircraft. They are on the pricier side of things, but they're appealing to a slightly different market, car makers rather than aircraft makers. So I still think it's a good release. I think these are good projects. You can go all in on these. 12th scale gives you a lot of scope for hand making things. It's easier to scratch build in larger scales. So for these, you know, I think this is good. Some 24 scale SSKs, but the 12th scale is pretty much absent. Now moving to, staying with a German subject, but moving to military vehicles, again dropping down in 35th scale. An Opel Blitz. Now, some of you again may say, well, hang on a minute. Italeri already do an Opel Blitz. And you'd be right. You also may say, well, you know, Tamiya do an Opel Blitz. So, you know, why would I buy this? Well, the Tamiya one is the 4x2. This is the 4x4. This is the Type A, which is a slightly different version of the Opel Blitz than the Tamiya one. In terms of the Italeri one, you can see here, this is actually the original tooling of it. It's the Italeri, so if you see the spelling of the company, it's a different spelling. This is when they first started. They had the extra A in there just to make it difficult for everybody who didn't speak Italian to say it. This dates back to 1973. So they have re-released this several times, but in terms of getting an update, again, you can't really compare a 2026 tooling with a 1973 tooling favourably, right? So Opel Blitz was used extensively, I think pretty much in every theatre of war. Great for dioramas. I think this will depend very much on the execution and the price. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So here is that tooling, 1973, and you can see it's been done Revell, Tomy, Testers, Hobby Model Bow, and then Italeri, obviously same company but just changed over, have released it many, many times, and this goes on. So definitely time for an update after, you know, more than 50 years. Okay, I'm going to pause there a moment and come across, fade over, and then just have a little look at the chat to see if there are any questions or comments. So as always, guys, if you've got any questions, put QQQ or question in capital letters and then put your question. If you've got comments, CCC or comment, just helps me pull it out of the chat as we're going on. So people talking about the Airfix. The M346 joint production with, it's the Yak, not the Sukhoi. That's what I was thinking of, the Yak 140. Yeah. So if FX do Brits, Italian, what a Revell, French or German? They're definitely not French, they're German. It's a German company. Edward has said they will do the Mackies, so Italeri should get in quick. Yeah, they certainly have dragged their heels a bit with it. Okay, lots of people just talking about bits in between. We do have a question. Hello, Alex. Is your Tamiya RF Tamiya mixing video the interior grey green you say to lighten with X02 white, but on the screen it says XF23 light blue? Would that be a mistake? I shall have to have a look at that. I would go with whatever's on the screen rather than what I said. Because what is on the screen is what the app has actually lightened it with. I actually went, excuse me, I actually had to do the mixes 3 times. The story of that, making that video is a saga to itself. I told actually a customer that came into the shop, yeah, I had to go through it 3 times. It's a whole thing. So the audio was actually recorded in two different sections. You probably, if you pay attention, you can tell the slight differences in some of the audio. So yeah, go with what's on screen, because the screen captures are of the app. If I've said something, I've either missed it, it was from the first recording, and it's just not been cut out and edited, or I just got it wrong. Sometimes I do. If I said XO2 rather than XF as well, then it's definitely wrong because I didn't use XO2. Scale Model Apprentice says, every complaint I ever heard from people about Italeri kits were actually reboxed from Eschi, etc. The actual Italian kits are pretty good. Yeah, there have been complaints by some YouTubers about Italeri, about some of their production. I mean, I've never had any personal issues with production from Italeri, but I'm one data point, So just as I think if you've got, a problem with it, it's one data point. So it's anecdotal. And this is why community comes in really useful, because if 300 people say the same thing, it's probably right? This is why the Airfix QC problems aren't just, anecdotal. It's because they affect a wide number of people. Like a high percentage of people that get Airfix kits have issues with them. Whereas, a much smaller proportion have problems with Italeri, Revell, Tamiya, ICM, for instance. So, Scale Model Apprentice says Revell are only recently German. So, yes, however, it's not recent, right? Revell Carrera is relatively recent, although not that recent. They were German before that. I think when Hobbyco finally was not involved, but yeah, I had a comment on my video, one of my old videos, Revell videos, talking about the two Revells. There are no two Revells. If we were talking in 1980, yes, you'd be right. There were two Revells, or even then, no, there weren't two Revells, because it was one company, but the Germans started moulding their own stuff. So it was a company with a split personality. Then they got split up, and then they re-merged. They weren't actually apart for very long, but they do have German tools, and they were actually saying the German tools are rubbish, which is actually the opposite. The German tools are really good. Everything now is produced in Poland, but it's managed from Germany. So yeah, I'm going to do a video on Revell at some point and try to, like I did with the acrylic paints. It'll probably get a lot of hate, because it usually does when you try and set the record straight. But yeah, that's enough on Revell. Let's talk about Italeri. Right, let's get back to our kits with new parts. So these are older kits or newer kits which have had new parts to produce a new boxing in some way. And the first one we're going to start off with is the Lancia Delta Integrale Safari 16 valve. And this is another 1/12 scale kit. Now I have to say, I'm going to give this a green to start with, because this is a 2021 tool, so it's a very recent tool in the grand scheme of modelling. And yet they've come back and they're adding parts to it. So it looks like they're doing some work on the engine. There's photo etch. I'm not quite sure exactly what has changed, because we won't know until the kit's actually out what bits they're adding for this particular version. But I think going back and iterating on a fairly new kit to produce a different version, ICM are really good at this. I think that's clever marketing, right? It's clever use of your tools. It's efficient. It gives people a different version as well, which we all want different things rather than having to go to the aftermarket. It gives you options. So for me, this is commendable. Again, this particular type of Lancia is either going to be your thing or not. It's a certain age. It's I think, what is this, like 80s, 70s, 80s sort of crossover. So if it's your thing, then you'll love it. If it's not your thing, it probably will pass you by. But I think this is a good this is a good release. And again, commendable to see Italeri going and using their tools in this way to give people more iterations of a similar subject. The next one is the Iveco Turbo Star. Now, I am not a truck modeler, and I'll spoiler alert: most of the following trucks are all going to get yellow, and that is because I don't really know whether these are good releases or not. I get a gut feel, and I'm in two minds of them because. One, I think it's great that they are serving this market. Italeri are well known for their truck models. They do a lot of trucks in 124 scale that basically none of the other big manufacturers do, which I think is great. And that serves a section of the modelling community which is poorly served elsewhere, right, other than specialist manufacturers. So I think that's good, and I think the fact that they're bringing out this particular version, the reefer truck, version is great, and if this is your thing, then it's obviously going to be green. However, the little fly in the ointment for me is this is a 1987 tool, so they're putting a new dress on a pig. it's one of the way, so I would say it. Rather than, and I don't know whether that is serving that market well, and I don't know. Maybe it's because it's a fairly niche market, and maybe the truck modelers out there are like, no, this is great. It's great to have something. The new parts will make it fresh and everything. We're familiar with that old tooling anyway, and we know what the faults are. So the new bits are good. That it's not worth them making a complete new tool, because otherwise you're getting an old thing for what I'm sure will be a new price. So that's why the majority of these in this section are going to be yellow releases for me personally. And if we have any truck modelers in, please do let me know, what you think about this, so then we can, get a more broad informed point. The next one is the Iveco S-Way low roof. The low roof version. This is a 2013 tool, so it's a lot newer. I put it as yellow because this was last seen in 2020. I don't know what parts again that they're adding to it. A lot of these are different iterations on the roof of the cabs, the way the cab is set up. So again, I put it as yellow because it's not much of an update to a new tool, and if you really wanted this, I'm sure. It's been around for 5 years, so will you have picked it up and already made whatever conversion you needed? I don't know. So, again, for me, this sits in the middle of, it's great that it's there. Is it the best? I can't really say. And that kind of goes, my comments for the first truck, the reefer, go for this Volvo F12. Again, this is a 1981 tool. Last seen in 2022, so again this has been released a number of times with different parts to make different versions, and again it does feel like you're being served up the same salad with a slightly different seasoning on it. So I'd love to hear from anybody that is a truck modeler that really knows these kits and thinks no, this is actually really good that they're doing this, or no, this is crap, they're just trying to get money out of old rope. We then have this, the M1 Abrams Tusk. Now, I think this is a good release because the M1 Abrams from Italeri was tooled in 2003, so it's not that old, 20 odd years, just over 20 years old. It was last seen last year, so they last released a version of this last year. This is the first time they've added the parts for the Tusk variant. And I know from the shop the Tusk variant is asked for quite a bit. So I think actually this is quite good. It serves a section of the market. It serves a need. And I think you can't ask much more of Model Company than to serve its customers when they want something. So for me, I think this isn't bad. This is, I wouldn't say it's like a primo release, but it's certainly a decent one. I'm sure there'll be some people out here who are just like, oh, that's really good. You know, getting a readily available M1 Abrams Tusk is fantastic. Now, I think this is the last in the kits with new parts, and this is the MAS. This is the 2A series. So, again, this has been released a few times. It's 1/35th scale, so this is a big old boat. You may have seen it at Telford if you were there a couple of years ago. They had one of these at the Italeri stand, I think. It's been released a few times. It's a 2010 tool. I think it's been released 3 times over that period, including this one, in various different versions. So, again, not quite sure what the particular differences are that they're introducing in this version as opposed to the others. But I think this will be a welcome return because I think people are keen on this. I believe it's a very good kit. It's certainly a big kit. And, you know, having it readily available rather than paying eBay prices for older versions, I think, is great. All right, let's have a look back at the chat just to see if anybody has brought up anything I need to comment on. I will be doing a poll. I thought I'd already started it, but apparently not. So do you think this 2026 preview from Italeri is good? That's a fair question, right? How about yes, no, or not sure, stroke undecided? That's a fair set of options, I would say, right? So there we go. Poll is up, so you guys can let me know what you think there. Straight away, it's getting off to a good start. So I'll leave that running and see if it changes as we go through. Because if you've actually seen the PDF, the PDF was released. It's available on the Italeri website. I will link it down in the description after the stream. I've not mentioned a few things. Now I do cover everything, but there are good reasons I haven't yet. So let's have a look now at reissues. You may see slightly different coloured traffic lights on some of this. Now the first one, however, and I'm giving green to a French aircraft. How about that? This is the Mirage 3C. Now this is a 1/32nd scale kit, so it's a big old bird. And this was first tooled in 2015. It was released again in 2016, and we haven't seen it since. So it's been a decade since this release. It's a pretty modern tooling. The Mirage 3C was used by quite a lot of different air forces. As you can see from the decals here, we've got French, Greek, and South African. So I think there's going to be some good schemes for this. And for me, I think this is pretty good. So I'm going to have a look at getting this. 32nd scale, it's going to be a big chunk of plastic. I've done a 48 scale. I don't know if it's the 3C or the 2000. They're similar size aircraft. And that was big enough. So a 32nd scale is going to be chunky bird. So yeah, I think this is pretty good. However, if I then go to the next aircraft, which is arguably more popular, the F-15C, not so much. and I'll give the reasons why for each of these. This is a 48 scale F15C. This was tooled first in 2002, last seen in 2021. And the thing is, there are a lot of other F15Cs in 148 scale, right? So the way that Italeri have been pricing things recently, they haven't been substantially different to the rest of the market. And certainly for new tools, quite a lot more. So I can't see this being at a price point when the Tamiya F15C exists, which is extremely affordable. And yes, it is an older tooling. You really do need to replace the tail feathers on it. But the value of that compared to going with a 2002 Italeri kit, I know which one I would pick every time, and it's not this. So I'm sure some people will think this is great, or have built the kit before and would like to build it again. But for me, I think this just isn't enough in today's market. 24 years of tooling difference for a very popular aircraft, which has seen a lot of service. I think this is a bit, it's going to get lost in the chaff, I think. All right. The next one is one I'm a little unsure of as well. And that's because this is the Eurocopter Tiger. So this was the proposed sort of pan-European defence helicopter, our answer to the Apache, effectively, which didn't really gain the traction that it should have done, or that they wanted it to. So it's a bit of a historical anomaly. Italeri tooled this back in 1995. It was announced to be released in 2024, but I've no evidence that it actually ever was. And the last time I could see it being released was actually in 1997 by Hella. So you can see I've actually built this kit. I built it as this one. So I picked it up, obviously after 1995, but not a lot after 1995. It was reboxed by Revell. It had some new parts in 1996. Then it was released by Hella in 2027, and as I say, it was announced in 2024, but it never actually came to fruition as far as I can see with Italeri. So this is sort of a delayed project. It's a pretty niche subject. It's pretty niche. It's not new. It's not got anything added to it. This is just the kit as it was, after it had the new parts added in 1996. So, yeah. I mean, the kit was okay for the time. I remember it being a bit basic. So, it really depends on price. And I don't feel the price of this is probably going to be where I could recommend it. So, for me, this I think is a questionable one. Definitely gets an amber traffic light. So, yeah. We will see how that one does. But for me, not a great part of the release. And that kind of goes as well by this kit, the AB205. So 148 scale. It's I just don't see the appeal of a 1998 tool. It was last released by DH Hello Stuff in 2016. I think if you were interested in this, you probably already picked one up, but yeah, not sure. Oops. Let's get on to the stuff which I think is decent. They're in the fire. I put them to the side so they don't burn. Yeah. Sorry, little interlude. We made some baked potatoes in our wood burner, and Maria was just wondering where they are. So this is the 1/72nd scale Raphael, or Raphael. Never know how to say that. This is the 2-seat version, the B. This is a 1993 tool. I've built the A version, which is okay. It's very much a 1990s Italeri kit. and if you've built any 1990s 1/72nd scale Italeri kits, you know what that means. So yeah, I think this is okay if it's priced appropriately. It hasn't been available in Europe for a while. 2024 it was sold by Platts, but they're not generally available in a lot of places in Europe. You can see 1998 was the first time the B came, so the original tool is 1993, but the B parts were added in 1998. It's been released a number of times by Italeri. It's been reboxed by Hella, by Hasegawa, by Revell, and latest it's been done by Platts. So the last time it's actually been available from a mainstream manufacturer, so from Revell, is 2014, so over 10 years ago. So again, if the pricing is right on this one, these are quite good sort of basic kits. I think if you just want a mojo build, if you just want to have a representation of the kit and you don't really want to get too invested, these are quite good, provided that they price them correctly. We then get another eagle, this time 72nd scale. This is the E, the Strike Eagle. Very popular subject, but again, this is a 1988 tool. Last seen in 2018, so not that long ago. Nothing, again, is being added to this. It's just a straight re-release. So for me, it's like, well, if you want an F-15E in 72nd scale, there are better options out there. This one has been done by the usual suspects, including, interestingly enough, Tamiya back in 2012. So it's not a bad kit, but it's not going to be able to compete with some of the more modern releases. And I would probably go for like a Hasegawa or something if I was wanting to build a Strike Eagle. And in fact, I have built a Hasegawa Strike Eagle, and it was very nice. Then we start getting to the the bottom of a barrel scraping. This is the AV-8B Harrier II. So obviously this is the Spanish and American liveried versions. I'm giving this a solid red because if you want a Harrier, a more modern Harrier, there are plenty of better options than this. This comes from 1982, and the Harrier is a popular aircraft. It's very, very well represented in modelling. This particular one has been done to death. So Italeri released it, Testers, Tamiya and Revell. Italeri haven't released it for quite some time, and there are better options to get out there. For me, if I was going to build an AV-8B, I'd get the Hasegawa kit. It's a 2000 tool. It's widely available. Revell have tooled it. Hasegawa tool it. It's going to be much crisper than that 1982 thing from Italeri. So for me, this is a bit of a bit pointless. It's a bit like the F117A from Airfix. However, on the flip side of that, another Harrier, the GR3 in winter camo, I think is a good release. Now, this is a 2003 tool, so this is a much more modern tool, 20 years on the past one. It was supposed to be released last year. It hasn't been seen for a few years. It was last released in 2022, not in its camouflage, but this camouflage scheme was announced last year, and it didn't get to us. So I think this one is it's a nice opportunity to pick it up, and it's a nice camo scheme as well. We are flipping between red light, green light here. The OA4M Skyhawk. Again, this is a 1983 tool, last seen in 2013 from Italeri. Again, there are much better Skyhawks out there that you can get, I'm sure, for probably the similar amount of money. Again, the usual suspects, have released this over the years. One of the things to me is that, so the Tamiya here has released a few of these 72nd scale aircraft because they don't really tool many themselves. But they released them once. You don't really see them in the current inventory, which tells a story of its own, right? Also a company called Flying Kiwis, which I've never heard of before, which is interesting. For me, again, go Japanese. The Fujimi kit I would go for. It's recently been released by Hobby 2000. They did a whole bunch of different variants of the Skyhawk, including the OA4M. This is a 1987 tool from Fujimi. Fujimi do nice kits. You might need to put a bit of interior detail in it, but Hobby 2000 kits are usually pretty good impressions of the originals, so that's the one I would go for. This one is a little bit I'm on the fence with, because this is a later tool. This is a 2001 tool. It's a very popular subject, the Starfighter. This is the 104S. It's only being released with Italian decals, so it's very much geared to the home market. So I think this is very specialized. So if you happen to want to do an Italian Starfighter, then knock yourself out. But the Starfighter is so well represented in 72nd scale. It's such an iconic looking, it's a rocket with wings. That I think if you wanted to build it, you probably built it. The Italian Starfighters are in grey, so they're not particularly interesting. I'd probably do a German one if I was going to do one, or do one of the original, nice shiny ones in the States. So for me, it's like, yeah, if it's your bag, fine, but otherwise, no, not so much. However, the 53C in 72nd scale, the Jolly Green Giant, I think is a good one. Now this is a 1993 tool, so it is on the, it's starting to show its age a bit, but there isn't really much competition out there at this scale for this subject. So again, it was last released by Platts in 2023, and it has done the rounds quite a lot. So if you've seen Revell or Platts boxing of this before, then hey, guess what? It's the Italeri kit. So there are a lot of kits out there. If you see one at a model show, in the bargain basement bucket, it's probably the Italeri kit. So the fact that it's coming out again, I think, is good for price control. It's always good to get re-releases of things from the manufacturer to keep second-hand prices down. But this has been released quite a lot, so good if you want that particular subject. Otherwise, it's not going to be. Although you could say that about most things, right? The Kamov KA-52 Alligator, I think, is this is a weird one, because I think Russian subjects at the moment aren't particularly hot anyway. It's they're not really flavour of the month and haven't been for several years. So I think releasing a Russian kit now, because Russia are it's also done by some other states that are allied with Russia that you really wouldn't want to be involved with. So KA-52, it was first tooled in 1999. I think theirs is one of the most modern toolings of it, and it has been reissued a couple of times by Tamiya again, and again we don't see that in their current range, and Modelist back in the 2010s. But yeah, for me this is a little bit ill-timed. I think I wouldn't have released this, but if you happen to want KA-52, I got this kit. I've done it in this. I've also got the A model kit, which is absolutely appalling. This is a much better kit than that, but subject-wise, this isn't probably one that most people would choose to do at the moment. We then have the Super Cobra, the AH-1D. Again, I'm a little bit in two minds about this one. The AH-1D particularly hasn't been made in the AH1D form very much in 72nd scale, but it has been made in every other form a lot by different people. So this goes back to 1987, so you aren't getting a pristine tooling. It's been released quite a lot as well, so it's gone through the impressions. So if this has flash on it, I'm not going to be surprised, especially as the last time it was impressed was well over a decade ago. You know, and Testors, Tamiya, Bilek, and Modelist have all had the plastic. So, yeah, for me, again, there are probably much better Cobras or Super Cobras out there if you want to do it, and you're not particularly interested in the 1D, you know, model. The Super Puma is, however, a more positive one. I mean, firstly, we do get 4 different air forces. It was used by quite a lot of different people. This is a 1998 tooling. It's actually one of the more recent toolings of the Super Puma in this scale. It hasn't been impressed as much as some of the other kits that we've looked at here. So Italeri have only released it 4 times before. Revell have had it, and Classic Plane as well. So hopefully the tool should be fairly good. And I say it's one of the it's certainly newer than the Hella tooling. So for me, yeah, this is okay. I think if you're interested again in the Super Puma, then this is not a bad chance to pick that up. You know, if you can't find one at secondhand at shows and things. Now this beast, the Gigant, the Messerschmitt ME323. I think this is a really good release, right? This is a 1977 tooling, but it's a pretty good kit. I've built this both in its glider form and in this engined form, and for 72nd scale, it's a big kit. It is. You get a lot of plastic with it. You get an interior, so you can actually open these doors up. You have the machine guns in there. It's got all the framing on here. For 1977, it was well ahead of its time, and providing the tooling has been kept clean and they produce it well, this is a really nice kit. It hasn't been around for a long time as well. 15 years ago was the last time we saw it. Italeri also haven't thrown this tool around a lot. Now, I mentioned 1977 because it does go back to the former spelling of the company. And they did co-release it with Revell and also release it through Tomy. But other than that, they've only released it themselves. So 1980, 83, 99, and last 2010. So you do see these at model shows. They do usually command fairly respectable prices. So again, I think this is dependent on pricing and you know, how good the tooling is, whether it's been cleaned up and how it impresses. But a good chance to, you know, pick one of these up if you were looking for one. It does lend itself to like a, well, I was going to say a mini diorama, but that's not really true. Quite a large diorama, because those doors open, as you can see on the box art down here. And you could have, like, you know, Kubelwagen or you know, some troops coming out of it. So I think this is quite a nice reissue. A little bit less impressive, I think, is the 217 J1 J2. This is the Night Fighter version. Again, this is a 1977 tool, so it goes back to the former spelling of the company name. But the 217 has been released quite a lot. It's been done in a lot of different iterations. It was released last year as the K1, K2 with the Fritz glide bombs. So this is just part of its history. So this, you can just see the past, 40 years or so. And it's been impressed a lot in different forms. It was last in Night Fighter version, I think, back here in 2007. So this, for me, you know, it's widely available. You can see these at model shows quite a lot. They don't go for that much. So again, depends on how they price it. If they price it sensibly, great to get, you know, fresh decals and everything. But we'll have to see on what they actually do there. The flip side to that is this, which is an even older tool. This is 1973, but this is one of the few 1/72nd scale toolings of the JU-188. I think JU-88 is a beautiful aircraft. I've got this. No, I don't have this kit, I don't think. I've got the JU-88, but not the 188. Or maybe I do have it. I'll have to check my stash. I haven't built it, but I have looked at all the parts. It's very similar to the JU-88. I think this is good because you don't see these around very much. I think it's only ever been released by Italeri, and they haven't released it a huge amount either. So the opportunity to get this, again, it will depend on price. You know, they could price themselves out of the market for a 1973 tool, given that, again, this has nothing extra added, right? But it'll have fresh decals and a good opportunity to pick up a kit that is pretty rare otherwise. What I really want to see, though, is ICM do a 1/48 scale version of this kit, which I think would be fantastic. Now, I mentioned the JU-88, which is actually a much later tool, and it's not a bad kit, but the JU-88 has been done a lot. In 1/72nd scale, there are better kits of it, later toolings of it. There are plenty on the second-hand market. So if you specifically want the torpedo bomber version, yeah, it's probably a little bit less, but I'm not sure that really justifies this release. So yeah, it could be okay, but I don't think it's certainly not one to go rushing out for, this one for me. So as I said, this JU-88 has been done a lot by Italeri. The torpedo version, less so. There are a few iterations here, which are the torpedo bomber version. But I say, if you're not too concerned about it being a specific torpedo bomber version, and there are very few differences, there should be plenty of these on the second-hand market if you specifically want the Italeri one. They released it in 2019, the A version for the Battle of Britain, and for me, there are better JU-88s out there. And that kind of also goes for this, the 190. The 190, extremely popular. There are much better versions of the 190 out there. The reason I've given this a yellow and not a red, because this is a 1989 tool, it's no spring chicken. I would take the Airfix kit of this, which you can get for like £8 over this any day of the week. The only reason I've given it a yellow rather than a red is because it's this World War II Aces scheme. So I think the schemes included in it are probably more valuable than the kit included in it. So it may be worth picking one of these up and a couple of Airfix kits to be able to make the different versions, the different Ace versions, depending on what they give you in the box, of course, which we don't know at the moment. So for that reason, I'm giving it a yellow. Otherwise, this would be a red. Now we get on to more trucks. We got the Black Thunder Australian truck. To start with, I thought, oh yeah, this is pretty good. It's more of an American big rig style. It's Australian as well, so that appeals to a different audience. It's a 1991 tool, but it was last seen. I thought, the American market could be good for this as well, but it was last released by AMT 5 years ago. So I think if you wanted one of these in the States, where truck modelling is much bigger than here, you've probably already got one, from a manufacturer that you recognise more than Italeri, even though it's obviously the same plastic. So for me, I think it's a bit of a borderline release, Having said that, if I were going to do a truck, I think this would be the one, right? Because it looks metal. Right? It looks like something you could put some blades and plates on this and make it Mad Max, without any trouble at all. 24 scale. It's that's a cool big rig, I think. So I mentioned it was 1991. It's been released quite a few times in different iterations, without and with trailers. It's also been released by Revell, Hella even released it. A Modelist, and I say most recently AMT. So yeah, it's not like there are none of these floating around. So for me, it's a bit borderline. Next up is the DAF XF95 Super Space Cab. This was last released just a couple of years ago as the Master Truck version. So again, it's that same situation. It's a 1980s tool. It's a slightly different cab version. It was recently released as a different version. So is this worth it? I mean, only you can tell, right, as a truck modeler, whether you're actually going to be interested in this. Because you could have picked up this 2024 version, right, and modified it. Or if you're that bothered about, having a different version, or if you're not. So, yeah, for that reason, these kind of truck releases are a little bit borderline to me, because I think a lot of people who want them probably already have them, and is it going to be worth that small difference to buy an entirely new kit? I don't know. We then have the Freightliner Aerodyne, which is another American big rig style thing. Just basically a brick with a cab and just using raw power to force its way through the air. Again, for me, it's borderline, right? It's another 1980s tool. We're going back to 1983 now. I think anything which goes back to when I was a child or earlier has to be a question mark, right? Unless there's a good reason, unless it is like that JU88 188, very rare, not tooled well, not covered well by other manufacturers, that kind of thing. For me, this I don't know, because again, Italeri themselves have released it quite a bit, including in 2020 and 2023. So twice in the last 5 years it's been released, by Italeri and by AMT. I think that's probably covering up most of the market, So, yeah, it's a question mark for me. However, this one, the Ford Aeromax, is a 1994 tool, and it hasn't been around for the last 12 years. Now, the reason I've given it a green as well is because it hasn't been around for 12 years, and it was only ever released twice by Italeri themselves. So this has that rarity factor. If you wanted one of these and you missed it on the initial release or on the re-release 12 years ago, this is your chance to pick one of these up. So I think this is good. I think companies that re-release these things every sort of 10, 15 years to allow people to pick that up, because the second-hand market is probably gone by then. It's going to be, you're paying eBay rarity tax on stuff. So I think this is really good. And, I encourage all manufacturers to do this. Airfix do it with their vintage classics and some of the other releases that they give us. And it's really nice to have the opportunity to be able to pick up something from, a time when a lot of people may not have been modelling. A lot of people come into the hobby in the last 10 years. So, I think 10 years ago, COVID hadn't happened. So I think this sort of thing is a really nice release. So it gets a big green from me, even though I don't know trucks. In fact, the next few trucks get greens from me, and they're all for similar reasons. This one is a 1987 tool. It's the DAF 1300 fire ladder truck. And again, that together with the Mercedes-Benz Wrecker truck, which is a 1982 tool, haven't been seen for a long time. Now, this has been released in the last 5 or 6 years as the 2238 6x4 version, but as the Wrecker truck, it hasn't been released since 2001. And I think when you have a very different version, so the Wrecker truck obviously has the complete arm assembly, all this stuff at the back, which is that's a lot of aftermarket or a lot of scratch building if you're not doing, if you're buying a base version to change to upgrade to scratch build, whatever. Whereas the fire ladder truck was, I don't know if you spotted that, was tooled in 1987, and it was only ever released once. It was last seen in 1987. So this one, again, for exactly the same reason as this, has that rarity. It was a one and done. Most people, I imagine, have never seen this, right? So this is your opportunity, again, to get a rarer version, or a rare kit, or a rarer version of a kit, as with the Wrecker Truck. Now this one is another one of these, and again, if there are any truck modelers, please do let me know. I could find nothing about this. Okay, I couldn't find it on ScaleMates, I couldn't find it online. The Mercedes-Benz dumper truck. I'm guessing it's an 80s tool, but I couldn't find it. So again, I think this is a good one because it probably has that rarity factor, right? A Mercedes-Benz dumper truck. So if you know more about this, good. ScaleMates isn't perfect. You know, a lot of kits were released and, you know, they didn't hit a big audience. They weren't successful. So they kind of got consigned to the dustbin of history. And if people don't put them on ScaleMates, then they just get ignored, right? There are several instances that I've come across. I've actually owned kits that aren't on ScaleMates, that just do not appear. Or boxings of kits that don't appear. Because it is a publicly funded, publicly operated system, a bit like Wikipedia. So this one, I think, is, again, a good opportunity to get something that potentially was only ever released once. Then we come to military vehicles, and we take, as you can see from the traffic light, a little of a downturn, because this is the Italeri Panther Aus D. Now, for the life of me, I don't understand why companies like Italeri would do something like this. So they're releasing a 1993 tooled Panther. 32 years, 33 years, if depending on when this is released. 33 years on from when this was tooled, in a market which is pretty competitive, and this exists. Now, if I were in Italeri business meetings or on the board or sales meetings or anything, this would be fine if it was £20. But speaking as a shop owner, I can tell you that Italeri kits do not retail for £20. They tend to price them pretty much the same as everybody else. So I imagine you can probably buy this Panther from Tamiya at the same price as you could buy this one. Which are you going to buy? I mean, there's just no contest. Even if it was tooled at the same time, most people would buy the Tamiya kit rather than the Italeri kit. There's a reason people buy Italeri armour over something like Tamiya, and that's usually because either it's got to be, you know, a cheap price point to make it cost effective, or it's got to be a particular specialist subject that you can't get in another manufacturer's form. This is neither. This is the Panther. This is, you know, an iconic tank, and why they've chosen to just re-release it rather than trying to do something different, I don't know. I'll be amazed if they sell very many of these. Apart from the Tamiya Panther answer, we then have the Panzerkampfwagen 38T. This is a 1973 tool. 1973, right? I bet there's a fair chunk of people in the chat that weren't born in 1973, right? It's been, you know, around the block a fair few times. So again, it goes back to that time when they had the A in the name. Similar sort of release pattern. You know, they partnered with Revell. They released through Tomy for the Japanese market, obviously. And they partnered with Testers in the past for the US market. This was actually released last year as the Gepard, the anti-aircraft version. But again, I'm just going to leave that here. 2019 tooling. The pricing I can almost guarantee will not be that much different. Why would anybody buy the Italeri version? I don't understand their marketing strategy here. I think what it is we'll just release it and it will probably sell. We'll sell some, right? The tooling's already paid for itself. We'll probably sell a few hundred, which I think is it's just bad business. It's a good job they're propped up by the Italian government. But, you're going to see a lot of these red traffic lights with this armour. The Hetzer, 1972 tool. The year my sister was born. Last released in 2018 by Revell. It's been released a lot by a lot of different manufacturers, including Tamiya, back in the 80s and then again in the 90s. Italeri and Tamiya seem to have this relationship where they use an Italeri box to plug a hole in their range until they tool it themselves. I'm not sure I'd enjoy that relationship as the Italian end of that, but and again, I'm just going to leave that here. A 2007 tool. Again, why would you buy an Italeri kit? You then also get into the fact that this is just if Tamiya was on the market, right? But we also have a fairly aggressive, very well-priced, very highly detailed set of newcomers onto the market from the Chinese. Takom, I've mentioned Takom in a few places, are doing really good things. This is a full interior Hetzer. They tooled this in 2023. Look how many iterations they've done of it in that time. In the last couple of years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 different versions. You can do a hypothetical anti-aircraft version, a flamethrower version, versions with different guns. I mean, and it's got a full interior if you want it. It's got a metal barrel included. They're just not looking at what is competing on the market here in the military sector, I feel. I'm going to sound a bit like a stuck record here. Because the 19mm GMC M36, I don't know if Italeri haven't been paying attention to the market. This again, it's 1989 tool. Guess what? Guess what was released last year by Tamiya? The M36. It's a beautiful kit. It sells for £36. It's £40 RRP. You can get it cheaper. Typically online. Like I sell my stock for about 10% less than RRP. It's about what you pay online for most things. You have to be able to compete online. So I sell this for £36. For £36, this is an absolutely stunning kit. I doubt this will sell for much less. In fact, I know that Italeri armour in my shop usually comes in, and it's usually around $39.99 on RRP, the same as Tamiya. Why would you buy a 1989 Tamiya kit with gluable rubber tracks when you can have this? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. However, I will give them a positive, because this Caro Amato L640, although an absolutely terrible tank, in reality, this is a 2008 tool by Italeri, last seen in 2010 by Tamiya. So it was only tooled and then reboxed once by themselves and then as Tamiya, although Tamiya added some parts to it. Now this I think is a good release because it hasn't been released much. It's unusual. It's very Italian. It gives you the opportunity again to pick up something that wasn't available. Hasn't been available for a while. So I think this is a decent release. And it's a quirky little weird Italian thing which was rubbish, right? So I'll probably buy this. And then we get back to the the rest of these. I had to stick in that little Caro Amato just to lighten the tone, because again, oh my God, Italeri, what are you doing? Last seen in 1994. It was seen in this form, and by that I will mean specifically the Aus E/H1. If you're just looking for a Tiger One Aus E, then it was released in 2024, and it was released last year as the Burger Tiger version. It's a 1994 tool, so it's a little bit later, but so that's how many times the tooling has been used, including by Zvezda. Again, 1989, you can buy 1989 tooling, the Tiger One. You can buy that basically anywhere. Why would you buy the Italeri version? Or you could buy a Tacom kit tooled in 2023, or a Board and Models kit tooled in 2020. And these aren't massively expensive. You know, they are excellent kits. So I really don't feel that the Italeri are paying attention to what Tamiya and the Chinese are doing. If they are just re-releasing, 1994 toolings of kits. I've done this kit. It's okay. Just okay. It's not great. It's certainly not a Tamiya kit, and these things just blow a hole in it like a Tiger would blow a hole in a Sherman. Now, this has a yellow. This is a 1998 tooling. The original was the Panzerwerfer 42, which I have done and is quite a nice kit. It's got most of the interior. It's got the driving position, everything. It's quite nicely made. It's quite nicely molded. But again, last seen in 2010. It's not unique. 1998 tool. It's okay. It's fairly widely available on the second-hand market if you go out and look for it, because it was tooled by Revell, and supposedly it was going to be released by Tamiya. I don't believe it ever was. But again, it hasn't been out of production that long. So that one is a bit of a question mark for me. If you specifically want this, sure. But I'm not sure there's that many people who are specifically looking for this. It's not exactly beautiful. This, however, I think is a good release. This is a 2015 tool of the VTLM Lynx. And it was last seen in 2016. So it was only released a couple of times. It was released in 2015, and then it was released again in 2016. And as far as I can see, they haven't tooled it, or haven't impressed it again since that time. So the Lynx is not very well represented. It's if you like these kind of, these are really before, I guess they're early high mobility platforms. I don't think they're really mine resistant, these the Lynx. But if you like these sorts of vehicles, this is not a bad one. It sort of looks like an armoured Range Rover to me, but with a gun on top. But I think this is a good release. I think anything that's slightly unusual and you get a second chance, you've got a lot of options for it as well. If you look at the decal options here, and of course, there's not going to be many decals on there as such, but be schemes for it. You get plenty. Right, there's plenty of European countries. There's Brazil and Ukraine, and all kinds of stuff. So I think this is not a bad one. We then drop down to 72nd scale, and this is the M8 Greyhound. I think this is good for little modelers, people who do little scale. It's almost 20 years since this was last seen. It's a 2004 tool, So it's a nice little vehicle, the Greyhound. It's got lots of little fiddly bits on it, though, for 72nd scale. I mean, look at it. 6.5 centimetres. That's about 2.5 inches in imperial. So it's a tiny, tiny little thing. But I think that is good. Now, going ahead to this, the AS42, which I think is a better vehicle. The reason I'm giving this a red is because this was released last year. This is not a 2026 release. So for that reason alone, this is a red for the 2026 releases, right? Because this is not a 2026 release, and you'll see that a few times as I come to it. So the actual vehicle and everything, I think it's great. If you're into 72nd scale stuff, this is absolutely fine. But I don't know why. Much like I don't know why Airfix put in the BF 109 into their 2026 releases when it was clearly released at Telford and available in December. Seems very, very odd. But yeah, I don't know why companies are doing this. It's like, hey, we're releasing this. It's like I've already built it. You sold it last year, And it's not like it was just, it's December like Airfix. This was released in June. So that one had me head scratching for a while, I must admit. This one is, I've got a couple on the end here. The complete set for modelling using the 124 scale Willis Jeep. This was released in 2021 as a special edition set. I think I've still got one in the shop, actually. So it's still available. I've given it a yellow because I like the idea of these complete sets for modelling, and Italeri do probably some of the best complete sets. So they include everything, and they include proper glue and paints and stuff. They're usually too expensive, I feel, and I don't think this is particularly the right subject, but I'm sort of giving them bonus points for trying. So that's the reason for the yellow there. And then finally, in this section, we have this set. So the Austerlitz set, some Napoleonic Wars. You got some MDF buildings. You got a little mini diorama thing here, and you can also buy all of the troops separately. I've given them a yellow because I think it's good to be supporting Napoleonics, which I think are often neglected by the mainstream manufacturers. I mean, there's no doubt they are neglected. However, it's brought down because a lot of these, in fact most of these, all these figure sets, they're not models for a start, they're figures. The one part, there's no posability or anything, and they're usually in a vinyl. But they were all released in 2025 anyway. It's only... Oh no, in fact they all were released in 2025. That's just a picture. It's only this set. Oh no, in fact that was as well. Oh, maybe I should give it a red. This isn't a 2026 release at all. God damn it, they fooled me. They fooled me with this picture. God damn it. Okay, I'll give them a yellow purely because they're supporting Napoleonics, and they've done something different at least by producing some laser cut MDF buildings. But otherwise, yeah, it's not a 2026 release. God damn it, they got me there. Right, so the next section we have, which is why you will have seen, if you've seen the PDF, I haven't covered all the stuff in the different sections. You might think, why has he not covered that? Because they belong in this one, because they're not original Italeri tools. So we'll get to that in a second. First of all, I need to have a look at comments. Oh, Dave has gifted 5 months Model Moments gift membership. Thank you very much, Dave. You're a gentleman and a scholar. And for the 5 people, Diffusion 9, Rose Saliba, Ian Williamson, Jim Aldecott, can't read, and JPEG Abobo. If you go to the YouTube not comments, community section, there was a members only post which will give you the Discord link, so you can go in there and join the Discord channel, which is the best way to chat with me. On that note, actually, I have just yesterday set up an entry level membership for my channel, so just 99 pence a month. I was going to do a free membership, but sadly YouTube doesn't have a free membership option, so 99 pence is the smallest one I can do. It only gives you access to the Discord channel. It won't give you access to the members only videos and stuff, which, as another aside, they will be starting up in the next week again. There was a lot on in December, obviously, so that kind of got shoved out to the side. So the gecko is still going, don't worry. But it gives people, I know times are hard for everybody, right? So I wanted people to have the option to kind of get involved in the community, because I think we're building a really good community. Without, I know my sprue level isn't much more, but that can make a difference to some people, right? £3 versus £1 a month. So that exists now anyway. I was going to talk about it on Tuesday Talk, but then I didn't manage to get Tuesday Talk because I was doing other stuff for a video, and it kind of and I needed to do all of this for today, so it kind of spiraled on. Right, let's have a little look. I've seen one here. Question: do Italeri have timescales for the new releases, such as the new 1/12 SSK and re-release of the Stratos? Re-release of the Stratos? I've not seen anything on that. Stratos was released last year in 12 scale. I've not seen anything saying there's going to be any re-release of it. But no, they don't. They don't. Not even through the distributors. Generally, the only heads up I get of impending Italeri stock is when it's like usually a few weeks before it's available, is when we kind of get the available to order but not in stock kind of things. So they don't give a, not like Airfix give a sort of summer 2026 or whatever. They don't do that. Julian says, comment, Gary went through the Italeri catalogue yesterday. Yes, he did. Not quite sure why that's relevant, but he did. Comment, may be worth investing in the model boat. Could be. It is a chunky boy, for sure. Okay, I think, just walking down, just seeing if I've missed anything. If I do miss anything, please do feel free to put your question or comment in a second time, so that I pick it up, or just put a comment to say check out my comment up. I put timestamps on so that you can refer back to it. Fina says, do you have to pay to use ScaleMates like this? No, ScaleMates is completely free. You just have to join as a member, which is free. You don't have to join, pay as a member to look at stuff. It's just, you can do other things, like you can leave reviews, upload stuff if you do. You can also upload your stash to it, so either by Excel or you can just add things from the site, which is quite useful. No, it's just time. It takes a lot of time because ScaleMates searches, it takes some getting used to, let's put it that way, to use it in, like, for research and stuff, because there's a lot of things they don't include. So you can't separate, for instance, I wish they would, and I understand why they don't, because retrospectively it'd be a hell of a lot of work. If there was a medium like filter, so you could like do injection molded, resin, vac form, that would be bliss. But at the moment you can't. So if you do new tools for the year, it will do everything: resin, 3D prints, vac form, metal, whatever. So yeah, but no, there's no payment other than time, our most precious commodity. A lot of people saying how old they were in 1973 and stuff. Yeah, 1973 certainly wasn't doing models. Julian says, as a bonus, the Amato was tooled this century. Yeah, yeah, indeed. Okay. Righty ho. People mentioning oven cleaner for some reason. How do you remove the bloody annoying chrome plate? Ah, right, yes. It's a very, very easy way to try and remove the chrome plate is you just try and glue it together and it will all come off. But no, oven cleaner. Mr. Muscle is a good one. Right, let's get on to the home straight then with the non-original tools. So this appears the Lancia Delta Integrale Safari 16 valve, which we mentioned before, but if you notice here, the scale is 1/24 scale, not 1/12 scale. Now, just because these tools are not originally Italeri tools doesn't mean I think that's a bad thing. Okay. This is another, remember I told you to remember the name, another Protar kit. So I think this is pretty good. I think it's quite good to have a 1/12 scale and a 1/24 scale kit of the same thing. Maybe they use the Protar kit to help them design the 12 scale, I don't know. But they have added to this old Protar kit. I say old, but it's still newer than some of their tools, right? Which I think is good. This was last seen 2018, so it has been released a few times. So it was released by Protar a couple of times in 91, then in 1992. I'm not quite sure when Protar went bust. I think it was around the turn of the century, around 2000, 2002. Italeri obviously picked up their toolings and released it in 2004, put in some new parts, and released it again in 2018, and now adding to it again for release this year. So I think that's great. I think it's good that some of these older toolings, companies that did good stuff, went belly up for whatever reason, aren't just forgotten. The tools aren't just melted down for steel. They do continue to live on in new guys. Protar being an Italian company, obviously, naturally kind of was going to be acquired by Italeri. This one, not so much. So this is a 1978 Eschi tool, which Eschi tools were variable, right? They did some really nice 1/72nd scale armor. They did some pretty basic 1/48 scale and 1/72nd scale aircraft. I've never encountered the cars, but my understanding is they weren't great. So yes, it's got new parts, but they have released this kit quite a lot already. So you can see this doesn't even go back all the way. This starts in like 1980, 1981 for the Eschi releases, and then it was released by even Humbrol had it, Gunsagno, and then Italeri. They also released it through Revell 2007, and then over the past 7 or 8 years they've released it 4 times. So yeah, it's been around the block a bit, this one. So I'm not 100% convinced that this is doing best service to customers. I don't know what parts they're going to add for the Rally Safari version, but it does seem a bit like, making a purse out of a sow's ear. We'll see. Another one I sort of I'm on the fence about is this one. This is a Spitfire Mark 9 in 48 scale, which, as you can appreciate, there are dozens and dozens of tools. This one actually isn't too bad. This is a 2008 special hobby tooling. I don't know much about that particular tooling, but I think getting a wider audience to companies like Special Hobby have done a lot of good in the last few years in terms of upgrading their production, the quality of their kits, etc. I also think it's quite good that they're honouring aces, and here you've got British, Canadian, and Polish aces, which I think is great. So again, I like the concept. I like the fact that they're they're not afraid to use a smaller, more specialised company that does a better tooling of something than theirs. But it is a Spitfire Mark 9. There have been a lot of Spitfire Mark 9s out in the past few years. It's one of many, isn't it? And it really depends what you want to do with a kit. I think if it's just as homage to some of these aces, some of the brave men who got in these machines, that's fine. Again, some of it will depend on price, but there's a lot of competition out there for Spitfires, as many people know. So Special Hobby kit. Special Hobby have released it quite a few times. It's also been released by Italeri quite a few times. And Revell have also released it 10 years ago. So, it's a kit that isn't unknown to people. It was just back in 2022 that it was released by Italeri. So, the fact that it's got the new decals in, I think, is the big draw for this one, right? Otherwise, it would be, pretty much just a nothing release. This one is a little bit different, I think. The Texan does nothing for me at all, but I think this is a good release. It's 48 scale, which will be a fairly chunky kit. It's got a lot of options. This is an Occidental replicas model from 1998. I don't know much about the company, but it seems to have made quite a few iterations, or quite a few releases at least, of the Texan. And the fact that it was released by quite a few companies usually indicates that it's a decent kit. So if you do know much about Occidental, I must admit I don't. I think they went belly up in the 20th century. But it has been released by Italeri a couple of times before as well, but not for the last decade or so. One, however, that I don't think is a good one is this beast. So this is the Kafir. So this is basically the kind of proto-Mirage that the Israelis made. It's an old SG kit, and as I mentioned before, 148 scale SG kits were pretty basic. They're not bad. You can slap them together quickly. They don't really feature any cockpit detail. You have a seat and you have a flat panel, with a decal, which doesn't really look like the instruments. I think trying to sell a 1976 basic SE kit in 2026, 50 years afterwards, again, if this was £15, I'd say that's great. I bet it won't be £15. You can get much better Kafirs on the market. This one is the Kinetic kit. So if you want to do a really decent Kafir, that's a 2013 tool, last released in 2022. It's also been released by Wingman Models. So if you see one of these kicking about, it's going to be better than this thing by a country mile. There's also the AMK kit. So that's, again, another 2013 tool. and was last released in 2024 by Academy. So again, I don't see any real reason to buy an old Eschi kit unless it's for nostalgia, but I don't think Eschi kits have the same nostalgia value as, say, an old vintage classic from Airfix. I think if you want to build a Kafir, it's to build a Kafir, right? To build a decent model of it. So yeah, that's not a good one, I don't think. This, however, which coincides, of course, with the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, is the 1997 Accurate Miniatures tool of the Dauntless. I think this is great, right? It's the right scale, 48 scale, for this subject at the right time. It was released a few years ago in an Academy box. Now it's being seen in a Italeri box. The Accurate Miniatures kits were pretty good. So I think this is a good release. Again, it will depend on the price. All of these have the caveat of, obviously, it has to be priced correctly. But yeah, I think this is a good one, and obviously the right sort of time. Unlike this, it's a Phantom. This is the RF4. It was released a few years ago as the F4, the EF. Why would you buy this? It's the old Eschi kit, 72nd scale. I won't say it's utterly crap, but I believe it was around 1982 this one was tooled. There are two different versions that Italeri have. Italeri did do an earlier 1981 tool, but that hasn't been seen for a long time. I think it's more likely to be the Eschi kit rather than the older 81 tooling, which I think they basically ditched. This is not good. You can buy way better Phantoms in every single iteration. If I was going to recommend one, you've got a choice here. There's 13 different. These are all different new tooled Phantoms since this one was brought out. Right, so there's plenty of scope here. If I was going to recommend one, I'd probably recommend Fine Molds. They do pretty much every single iteration of the Phantom, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than a 1970s or 1980s Eschi tool. One that kind of sits in that uncomfortable maybe space is the Strato Tanker. This is the old AMT Ertl tooling. It was tooled in 1992, and the good thing about Italeri doing these old AMT kits is AMT's plastic was appalling, whereas Italeri plastic is reasonable. So yeah, the actual fit of the tooling is still going to be dictated by the AMT side of things, but at least you can sand it. So if you really want a Stratotanker in 1/72 scale, which is going to be huge, by the way, then sure. You will need to put some work in, but you're gonna know that anyway, right? So I don't expect this is going to be cheap, though. So it's really down to the individual, as always. So yeah, the AMT one, obviously, it went through various different iterations. It was done quite a lot. If you see the Hella version, it's the same kit. They've done it a couple of times, and recently, 2009, Italeri tooled it as well. So no surprises. This one is a little bit of an odd one for me. The MB339, again, very Italian. This is one of the latest supermodel toolings I think there was. So Supermodel, again, another Italian company, a lot. So Italeri got a lot of Supermodel tools, the BV-138, some of the old World War II bombers, a Supermodel. They go back a way, and I think around 1997 or so was about the death of Supermodel. But you can see the reason I gave it a yellow is Italeri have done this a lot, right? They've released it a lot. So you can probably pick one of these up second hand. You know, if you can't, then yeah, it's fine. But again, it's not one probably people are going to be hammering the doors down for, because you know it's been released every couple of years for, you know, since 2010. So yeah, 7 times in the last 16 years. So not exactly a dearth of them around, or not around. This one, again, it's a little bit of a yellow for me. The F1111 is really poorly represented in modelling in general. So this is a 1988 tool, but it's again the 1988 Reissues tool. And yes, the availability of this plays to its strengths. However, it was released in 2024 as the Raven, the electronic warfare, the EF111A. You can see that here. It has been released quite a bit by Italeri themselves. And you also have, of course, the Hasegawa kit, which was a year later, so this is 1988. It's a year later, but it's a year later Hasegawa tooling. So again, if I've got a choice between Italeri and a Hasegawa original tool from the same time, I'm going to take the Japanese manufacturer every single time. You know, it was also last released in 2024 as the Raven. It's also available through Hobby 2000, which widens its availability quite a lot. So again, I can't really see a good reason to take the old Reissues kit. I just seen a comment, the Discord link doesn't work. No, it doesn't, because it's always updated after the stream. So if you try again after the stream, give me half an hour or so, I update the link because I get it to expire. It expires every week. So. Okay, then we have this. Again, this is an old Supermodel tooling. This is a 1973 tool. Again, it was last released by Supermodel in 2012. Okay, this must be one of the last releases. I thought it had gone before then. But if we look, Supermodel and are the only people that released it before Italeri. So I've actually got, I think, this boxing here. No, I'll have this boxing here. I got the 1973 original boxing, not the 2012 one. I think this is a good opportunity to pick up a very poorly represented subject. You don't see this represented in 1/72nd scale really pretty much anywhere else outside of 3D and resin. So it's a product of its time, I will say. You need to work at it, but again, if you particularly want to do a 1007, it's kind of the only horse in the race. This, to me, is another pointless release. Not that it's not a decent kit. This is a 1988 Academy tooling. But I just don't understand why you wouldn't just buy the Academy kit. It's B17F. Obviously, the B17G tends to be the one that a lot of manufacturers do. The F has been represented a few times. Revell, I think, did one. Hasegawa, which I think is a little older. But yeah, it's like, to me, I'm not really sure why they are releasing a B17F, which has been released a lot. I mean, Academy have released this a lot, right? Airfix even used to release this. So, yeah, it's, I don't know. To me, these kinds of things mystify me. Why a company particularly wants to do this. It's just putting another version of the same kit onto the market. And this, I think, is what upsets people when they see this kit, a new kit. Oh, a B17F, fantastic, a new kit of this. And they get it, and it's not a new kit. It's probably the same kit that they've made a couple of times before. So, yeah. This just... Sorry. That was all the times it's been released up until, I think this is like 1996. And this is from 1996, so going to the 2000s. So it's been released a lot. Like a lot. Then we come to another Protar kit. This one, I think, is really good. So, not quite sure when this was released, because you cannot find anything out about this at all. I even looked at the instructions on an eBay version of this, the original Protar kit, and it doesn't even have a copyright date on it. I think it's probably 80s. That seems to be a lot of when these Protar, 80s, 90s, seems to be when they were released. From the box art and everything, I would say 80s. But this is the only kit of the G50 available. So if you want to match this G50, the Protar kit is the only one in this scale. So I think the opportunity to get this kit again is great. And this, I think, is what, old toolings taken up by companies. They should clean up the molds, re-impress them, give people a second chance to make these kits from, that just weren't done by anybody else. That, maybe don't warrant anybody investing into a new tool, but you still can build this kit. I think this is a good re-release, not an Academy kit which has been released, 15 times before. And that's where I'm going to come to with the next 3 kits, actually. They all get reds because they are not 2026 releases. Not that they're not good kits. So these are all Fujimi kits. Fujimi car kits are like a lot of Japanese car kits. Aoshima, Tamiya, Hasegawa. They're good kits, but this was released in December 2025. This is not a 2026 release. So it gets an automatic red. Fujimi have released this a lot. Italeri have released it before as well. Not as the Abarth, as just the standard Fiat 500. I think it'll be fairly popular. There's nothing against the actual release. It's just not a 2026 release. Likewise, the Murcielago. This was released in 2025. How do I know? Because I have stock in my shop in 2025. Now, the one thing I will say about this, and I will say about Italeri, on the box it does actually say plastic by Fujimi. So they do quote, and it's on the front of the box, it's in white lettering at the bottom here. It says that it is a Fujimi kit, which I think is great. And I think if they do that with all of their kits, then that's a good thing, right? I think that honesty and openness in modelling from the model manufacturers in showing us the provenance of their kits is really a positive step. I think they're doing it possibly because Fujimi actually has a positive name. So it's not perhaps for the reasons of honesty, but more for like, oh, look, we do Fujimi plastic. But at least it's, it's a step in the right direction, right? But again, it's not a 2026 release. Again, Fujimi released it quite a lot. This is the first time. And I think this is good because Fujimi kits can sometimes be difficult to get in Europe. I don't know what it's like in the States. I expect probably better. But certainly in Europe, getting them through Italeri, I think, widens that the possibility of people getting them. And then again, we have the Gallardo. I don't know why I didn't give this one a red. Oh, I think it's because, although it isn't again, it's not a 2026 release, it's a 2025 release. These are already out. No, I should have given it a red. I do apologise. But again, same thing. Released a lot by Fujimi, first time by Italeri. So again, widening that market and availability, which I think is good. Yeah, the Toyota Land Cruiser Safari. I give this a yellow because it's an old tool. It's an old 1980s Eschi tool again, which I think is bad. But I couldn't see this version of the Land Cruiser done by anybody else. Now, it has been done quite a bit, and it's been done quite a bit recently. So from 2021, they've released this themselves and a couple of times by Platts. So, the availability of it, okay, not in the Safari version, but it's been kicking about a bit, right? To me, it's yeah. I would prefer to do like a more modern version of the kit anyway, but it has a certain appeal, I guess, which is why I gave it yellow. We then go back to Protar. This is another Protar kit. This is a 1/24 scale this time. This is the Porsche 956, a Jägermeister version. I think this is a nice looking sports car. Again, certain era when you had these complete box bodies. But again, not quite sure when it was tooled, because again, this was only released a few times by Protar themselves. Has been released by Italeri about 6 years ago, 2019. But again, I think the option to have this, especially with a special livery, the Jägermeister livery, is a good opportunity again to pick up a kit that otherwise would be lost to time. We then have another Protar kit. This is again the Lancia Delta Integrale Jolly this time. Giving this a yellow, it's basically because it's the same kit as before, which has been released before, and this time it doesn't have any added parts. So unlike the former one, the Rally Safari version, which had extra parts added, this one doesn't. It's just a simple reboxing, and we have had it released a few times, so kind of downgrades it a bit. I realise we're going a little long, but we've only a few left. So this is the 1982 Range Rover, the Eschi kit. Again, it's been done a lot, and for me, if you're going to do a Range Rover, get something decent. This is an Aoshima version. It's not the police version, but hey, you can add police stuff to it, right? For me, that's a much better kit. This one, I think, however, is a decent release, because this is a Ford Transit, which is, okay, it's the Italeri version. So you get Italeri decals to put on it. I'm not quite sure whether that's the appeal. But I think the opportunity to build a Transit, lots of people, Transits were like the force of Britain, right, in the 80s and 90s. So I think there'll be a lot of people that would want to pick up a Transit. I think the fact that it's an Eschi kit probably doesn't matter that much, because the people who might be building them might not be, if you like, dedicated modelers. It's not been released that much either. There's a police version released back in 2017, but again, we're going back 10 years now. So again, I think it's quite a good second chance kind of option for this. We then have a couple of iterations of this kit. So this is the Dodge WC62. We also have the Dodge WC54, the ambulance version of this. These are both Max kits, Max plastic kits, which are 1970s kits that I have never seen tooled more than any other. Look at this. This has been basically impressed by so many companies over such a long period of time. including Airfix. So you have the Dodge Command car. There's a couple of versions here. You have ambulance versions. You have Italeri. You've got Hella. You've got basically everybody. This tooling has been everywhere. It's just like I've never seen as many. 3 different screenshots just to be able to get it on one piece. It's absolutely huge. So yeah, I think it's great. The Peerless Max kits, or the Max plastic model, which then became Peerless Max, were not actually bad kits. They were well ahead of their time. They're not up to today's standards by a long shot. But if you can't pick them up in, anywhere else, you've got the second bite of cherry here. You've then got a T55Y, same reasons that we went through all of the others. It's a 1990 tool, right? Eshi. I've built this kit. Again, it's okay. But, it's been done a lot. I actually have this version, I think, 1991. But look at that. T55A, 2025, 2023 tooling by Reissues model. A better kit in absolutely every single way. So why would you build that one? The M60A2 I think is great. Eshi, I said, did some great little 70-second scale kits. I don't think you can really pick this up in many other iterations. It's not been seen for a while. So I think this is quite a nice little one. It'll probably be quite a nice little mojo build. And that, I've lost myself. And that is Italeri Reissues, or the release preview, as they call it, for 2026. So a real mixed bag for me. For me, they started off, their new toolings, I think, look great, right? The bits that are adding on to other kits, like a bit of some of the re-releases, I think look good, but there's a whole swathe. I think if you're a military modeler, I would rightly feel chagrined at Italeri's releases. I think it's pretty terrible, right? They're not competing in any way with, I don't think, anybody. I think if you're a car modeler or a World War II aircraft modeler, there's some good service in there. I think some of the modern stuff, Cold War plus stuff, like the Mirage 3, 30-second scale, some good pieces there. But it's one of those release schedules, I think, that you have to pick at. I think you have to watch people like myself, like Gary, look at scale mates, when they come along, to actually see, to dodge the minefield pieces, to pick out the gems along there. But I'll quickly go through the comments, and then I shall bid you all good night and let you guys get on with your evenings. So I mentioned the Discord channel, so if you give me half an hour or so after this, I'll update the link. You can go to that post. The link will be updated and you'll be able to get into the Discord. I'm just trying to find my place. Go back to about 9-ish. And just see if I can pick out anything. Any CCCs or QQQs. Oh, that was I didn't realise there's Discord chat. I think people talking about all of that. Some of these releases smack of Italeri trying to take advantage of a modeler's ignorance stroke trying to make sales by deception. All's fair in love and business, but I think this is a tad shitty. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, and it has to be said that a lot of model companies, and I think Airfix were really the first to start doing it, they're printing the tooling date, they print provenance, all that kind of stuff to have the transparency. I think it's much better to get the trust of modelers, although Hornby have destroyed a lot of that for other reasons, which we won't get into tonight. Yeah, it's better to have the trust of a customer than to make a quick buck, right? Apparently you need to be careful with Academy B17F/Gs. Some boxings do have the Cheyenne tail, some only the early Stinger tail, which might be a bonus. Yeah, I have no idea what Italeri are boxing. Not to mention the side gunner position, something Airfix didn't account for. Theirs was a G though, right? Okay. John says the Arbath. That Arbath looks nice. Yeah, but I'd buy the Fujimi kit, you know? Okay. British-made Transit, always a good seller. Yeah. 956 is great looking, but the Protar one is a dog. I think the first release was 1984. The Jägermeister livery is available on a Tamiya 962, based on the same car, but that one is based on an RC car. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So maybe the Protar one. So just because it's a good opportunity to get an old kit doesn't mean that the old kit was any good, right? That's always the caveat, right? Okay, well, that's everything from Italeri and from me for tonight. So thanks, guys, for joining. I know it was quite a long one. There was quite a lot to get through, even though some of it was kind of added on dross. And some of it wasn't even 2026, right? Once you cut that out, you lose about half a dozen models. So just feel like they were bulking things out a little bit with that, which I don't think was necessary. Some interesting things in there. Do let me know if you've got any other comments in the video comments below. And I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Thanks.